I wonder whether you will humor an ancien professeur. Perhaps our francophones will illumine me further. I should say perhaps un ci-devant professeur. In any way, it means an old professor. If I take you back to the 20th of April 1945 and give you a tour d'horizon, a little tour of the horizon. What was happening on the 20th of April 1945? Well, in Tokyo, the Prime Minister of Japan, Tojo Hidekai, was holding an emergency cabinet meeting, which is hardly surprising given the circumstances. In Moscow, Stalin, the man of steel, whose real name was Yosef Vissarionovich Djugashvili, he didn't speak Russian until he was 10. He was off to his dacha for the weekend, confident that Russian troops would soon take Berlin, the capital of Nazi Germany. In the capital of Nazi Germany, in his bunker, Adolf Hitler, the Führer of the Third Reich, was spending his last birthday, celebrating his last birthday with his companion, Eva Braun, worried about the Russian guns that he could hear approaching. In London, Prime Minister Winston Churchill was having his third bottle of scotch. And that's true. And his second cigar of the day. My mother was trying to protect me from German flying bombs in the meantime. She did a successful job, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be here. In Washington, there was still lamentation in most quarters, not all, but in most quarters, for the recent death of Franklin Delano Roosevelt the week before. In Los Angeles, there were plans for a great war bond rally, if only we could get those interest rates today, at which the stars would appear. And what was happening in Honolulu during that same 24-hour period? Members of a unity group were about to apply for their charter of incorporation. Several members of the unity group that was here at that time went to the Treasury Department downtown here in Honolulu, and they presented a petition which asked that they be granted tax-exempt status as a not-for-profit religious organization devoted to the teachings of Jesus Christ as interpreted by Unity School of Christianity on the mainland. This petition was accepted, and just over a month later, on the 25th of May, the governor of the territory of Hawaii, Governor Steinbeck, he signed this petition into law. It's a wonderful document. This is a copy of it. We keep the original under lock and key. But it pleases me enormously. It touches me to an extraordinary degree that we sit here this morning because these people took that action on the 20th of April, 1945. And even more touching, even more extraordinary is the fact that we who sit here today are still doing what they wanted to do nearly 70 years ago. We've kept the flame alive, and I think we should be proud that that's the case. Well, now I want to share some ideas with you. And first of all, I want to read you a story from Scripture. This is from the 37th chapter of Genesis, and it has to do with Joseph. Joseph came up to his brothers, and they stripped him of the long-sleeved robe which he was wearing, and they took him and they threw him into a pit. The pit was empty and had no water in it. Midianite merchants passed by, and they drew Joseph up out of the pit, and they sold him for 20 pieces of silver, not an inconsiderable sum in those days, to the Ishmaelites, and they brought Joseph to Egypt. Joseph prospered in Egypt. He was sold to one of the Pharaoh's counselors, a man called Potiphar. And Joseph lived in the house of his Egyptian master, who saw that the Lord was with Joseph and was giving him success in all that he undertook. Thus Joseph found favor with his master, and he became the personal servant of his master. Indeed, his master put him in charge of his household and entrusted him with all that he had. What an extraordinary story that is. We know, those of us who are familiar with the story, that a little later on, Joseph encountered other vicissitudes, but he weathered them exceptionally well. And he succeeded. He became indeed one of the most successful figures that we find in the Old Testament. Even though he had been so horribly victimized by his own family, by his brothers. Can you imagine coming home one evening and your brothers, who are envious and jealous of you, they strip you of your clothing? It wasn't a coat of many colors, that's a mistranslation. They stripped him of his fine coat. They strip you of your clothing. They throw you into a pit without any water. As far as they're concerned, you can die there. But actually, you get sold as a slave, which is a pretty good deal, because at least you're still alive. But could anyone not say that this is a victimization? I think I would say, my God, I'm a victim of what has happened to me. And yet, of course, Joseph, because of his belief in the power of the Lord, the strength of the Spirit within him, he, in the end, triumphs. He will not accept that diminution, that extinction of his power as a child of God. Well, that's one form of victimization. Now, I'll tell you about another. This is called the bricklayer's lament. The following is an accident report that was printed in the newsletter of the Workers' Compensation Board. It begins, "Dear sirs, I am writing with difficulty in response to your request for additional information in space 3 of the accident report form. I put victim of circumstances as the cause of my recent accident. You asked for a fuller explanation, and I trust the following details will be sufficient for you. I am a bricklayer. On the day of the accident, I was working alone on the roof of a new 6-story building. When I completed my work, I found I had some bricks left over, which, when weighed later, were found to be slightly in excess of 500 pounds. Rather than carry the bricks down by hand, I decided to lower them in a barrel by using a pulley which was attached to the side of the building at the 6th floor. Securing the rope at ground level, I went up to the roof, swung the barrel out, and loaded the bricks into it. Then I went down and untied the rope, holding it tightly to ensure a slow descent of the bricks. You will note in space number 11 of the accident report that my weight is 135 pounds. Due to my surprise at being jerked off the ground so suddenly, I lost my presence of mind and forgot to let go of the rope. Needless to say, I proceeded at a rapid rate up the side of the building. In the vicinity of the 3rd floor, I met the barrel, which was now proceeding downward at an equally impressive speed. This explains the fractured skull, the minor abrasions, and the broken collarbone, as listed in Section 3 of the accident report form. Slowed only slightly, I continued my rapid ascent, not stopping until the fingers of my right hand were 2 knuckles deep into the pulley. Fortunately, by this time I had regained my presence of mind and was able to hold tightly to the rope in spite of the excruciating pain I was now beginning to experience. At approximately the same time, however, the barrel of bricks hit the ground and the bottom fell out of the barrel. Now devoid of the weight of the bricks, the barrel weighed approximately 50 pounds. I refer you again to my weight. As you might imagine, I began a rapid descent down the side of the building. In the vicinity of the 3rd floor, I met the barrel coming up. This accounts for the 2 fractured ankles, broken tooth, and severe lacerations of my legs and lower body. Here my luck began to change slightly. The encounter with the barrel seemed to slow me enough to lessen my injuries when I fell into the pile of bricks below, and fortunately only 3 vertebrae were cracked. I am sorry to report, however, as I lay there on the pile of bricks in considerable pain, unable to move, I again lost my composure and presence of mind and let go of the rope. I lay there, watching the empty barrel begin its inevitable journey back down to me. This explains the 2 broken legs. This also explains why I cited victim of circumstances as the cause of my accident. Well, we have 2 signal examples there, do we not, of victimization. In the first instance, in the instance of poor Joseph, I think we may say with a degree of understanding that Joseph was not entirely the author of his own misfortunes. He was a victim of circumstances to a genuine degree, even though he had excited the envy of his brethren because his father favored him. In the second instance, we have here a clear author of his own misfortunes. Who has not taken a shovel, gone into the backyard, dug a deep hole, and then proceeded to jump into it? Have we not all, from time to time, had the right to describe ourselves as victims of circumstance? Now, in some instances, those circumstances were self-provided. I might even say, in fact, I am going to say, that from time to time, we do get a certain degree of mileage from victimization. Who does not feel sorry, initially, for a victim? Of course we do. If somebody is hit by a car and is lying in the gutter, don't we rush to help them? Well, I would hope that we would, because we empathize. Horrible, ugly neologism that I don't like at all, but we empathize with that person. We feel their pain, so we rush to help them. They are victims. Maybe they didn't look the right way when they crossed. I must say these crossings here in Honolulu are potentially lethal. So we rush to help the victim. Now, there are times when we use this sense of victimization to our own advantage. Why should we not? It's a wonderful form of emotional blackmail, and many of us are quite skilled at that game. Let's be honest. Victorian literature, if you should read such a thing anymore, is filled with examples of folk who use the notion of victimization to gain a little traction in life. Why should they not? Well, we have come to realize in our modern world that victimization is not a particularly healthy state of mind, that if it is present in our psyches, it probably ought not to be, because it is essentially damaging to our own sense of self-worth and our ability to take control of our lives and to assert ourselves as human beings who have dignity and worth in our own right. Many of the people who come to see me, talk to me, counsel with me, confidentially, I assure you, always confidentially, they reveal a sense of victimization. And in many instances, my feeling is that they have been victimized in various ways, abused perhaps, in a variety of instances. We like to say in Unity sometimes we draw to us the events that we experience. I think there's an element of truth in that, but I'm not sure I would want to carry it to the extreme. When I take my walk in the evenings, as I do, I live on the beach and I walk in the Kapiolani Park sometimes. You will see me flitting between the trees. A sylph-like presence. Yes, well, quite. We won't go there, but I'm always troubled, concerned by the number of homeless people I see in that situation. I know the city's trying to do something about it. Haven't they just appropriated $35 million? I don't know. That's the city. I look at these people and I wonder to myself, how many of these people, whom one might well regard as victims, how many of these people have put themselves there, and how many of those people are there because they have been victimized by social or economic circumstances, apparently ostensibly beyond their control? I don't know. I talk to some of them. Some of them are quite obviously victims of the kind of society in which we live. Others have put themselves there for a variety of reasons, some of them probably as self-destructive as the bricklayers. I don't know. But I see people and I hear people who speak of victimization, and I do know that when victimization becomes an innate part of our psychology, of our psyche, something is wrong, because we are held back from the potential that all of us as children of God should exhibit and enjoy. It's our prerogative. It's our birthright. It's what we are. Now, I can give you an example of when I was the victim of circumstances ostensibly beyond my control. When I was a little kid of, I suppose, about 8 or 9, I went to a day school, a boys' day school, and I had a friend who also went to a day school. He was older than I by several years. Maybe that's because we got together. I liked him. He was a little more sophisticated than the kids I usually used to meet at school, and he was a very bright young man. His name was Peter. Peter and I used to walk together every evening as we came home from school. And we had to go at one point through a maze of back alleys, almost a labyrinth of back alleys. And we were, at some point or another, in that final phase of our return journey, attacked and trapped by what we today would call a gang of kids. They were older than we were, considerably older than we were, bigger than we were, tougher than we were. And they would always try to block the entrances to this maze of alleys. So no matter what exit we tried to take, one of them was there, and he would whistle and the other kids would come. And then would begin a period of physical abuse. They would punch us and kick us. They hated Peter in particular because, bless his beloved heart, he went to a Catholic day school. I didn't. So as a Protestant, I got fewer kicks than he did as a Catholic. Bless his beloved heart. Why he would have to suffer for his beliefs, who knows? Not even God. But we suffered this abuse day in, day out. We didn't tell our parents. You might say, well, why didn't you tell your parents? You were being bullied in this way. In those days, one didn't tell one's parents. One took it on the chin. It was character building. Maybe you could fight back. There were more of them and they were bigger than we were. I didn't feel like fighting back. So I got knocked around. Not too much, but Peter got knocked around a great deal. Eventually, after 2 or 3 years, this almost daily experience ceased. Maybe they were too old to go to school or whatever. I don't know, it doesn't matter. But this was, I felt, victimization. But all the time it was taking place, during this period of discomfort and even fear, it was a frightening experience for a young kid of 7 or 8 years of age. During all this time, there was something in me that said, this is not right. What you are doing to me is wrong. You are trying to demean, diminish, even extinguish something that is fundamental to my nature. Something in me that you can't take away anyway. You can try all you want. I am a victim right now. I didn't want revenge on them. I didn't give a damn, frankly. I didn't want revenge. I wanted to be left alone. But what I really wanted to do was to assert and to proclaim my personhood in the face of that assault. And I did. Whether they knew it or not, they probably didn't. I don't care. I came out of that with my integrity intact because I refused to be their victim. Some years ago, I had a Jewish friend who passed through the horror of the extermination camps. I'm sure you know there's a distinction between a concentration camp, Konzentrationslager, and a death camp. They're two different things. This man had been sent to a death camp where he was to be destroyed at some point. He didn't know when, but undoubtedly at some point he would be eliminated because he was Jewish. He survived that experience. And when I knew him, he was a fairly young man still. He died just a few years back. He was still a fairly young man. And I remember powerfully on one occasion I was talking to him, and I said, I'm so sorry that you were victimized in this way. I mean, for heaven's sake, wouldn't you say that you were victimized if you were in a death camp waiting to be done away? Isn't that the ultimate victimization? Your own fellow human beings are going to do you in at any moment. You don't know exactly when. But to my surprise, he rejected that assertion with a vigor that really almost alarmed me. He was angry. He said, don't you call me a victim. I was never a victim of those people because I wouldn't let them victimize me. They could not take away my spirit. They could not crush me. I was a child of God, whatever they did to me. And here I am today. And I felt heartened by what he said, shocked and heartened, because I thought, my God, the human spirit endures through all. We don't have to be victims. Sure, we can make ourselves victims, and we do. Oh yes, for a variety of reasons. And we even get mileage out of doing that. Other people can victimize us, or try to. Shall we let them? Does anybody in this room want to be a victim? Hands up, please. Who'd like to be a victim? The bus is leaving in 5 minutes. Victims aboard. Nobody wants to be a victim, do they? We don't have to be. Our Maker didn't design us to be victims. Our Maker designed us, I am convinced, to be victorious in this life, to assert ourselves as children of the Most High. There is a light that burns so precious in us that nothing can diminish it. Nothing can extinguish it. Nothing can eliminate it. As long as we cling to that thought, no matter how others may attempt to victimize us through any number of abuses, no matter how we ourselves may dig holes in the backyard and jump into them, nothing takes away from us that fundamental truth that we are victorious in the Spirit, always and forever, because that's what it means. That's what it means to be a child of God. Done.